What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And today we are talking week 7, the leftover games, G5 games, greasy games, your requests. Basically just games we didn't get to in our earlier shows this week where we talked about the marquee games. Before we get started, if you like this content, please consider subscribing, leaving a like. Believe it or not, those two things help a small channel like this a ton. So thank you if you have done that. If you ever have requests for games, please let me know. We're only going to get to 9 today. A lot of weekday games, which just takes away time from this video. So I don't know. I was maybe considering doing this in maybe a live presentation on a Saturday morning, if that's something you guys would like. Maybe hang out, talk about all the games. But debating that, there might be some technical difficulties. But let me know if that's something you would enjoy. 2 things. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. And second, we're in week 7 now. I've been unkindly reminded by the market that injuries are becoming increasingly important. So just some advice. I've had to learn this the hard way this week. Pay attention to injuries leading up to lock. It can hurt you or it can really help you if you're taking advantage of some spots where teams are not really being honest with their injury situations. We might have a few of those this week, and it's already happened on Wednesday night. So we'll try to highlight that more as we move forward as well. So it's just a leak in my game trying to fix. But let's dive in. Miami, Ohio takes on Akron, a request from you. 11.5-point spread in favor of Miami, Ohio, a 46 total. One thing that the injuries and waiting a little bit would help you with is not taking bad lines. This is a tough week, probably the toughest of the year. I've eaten some bad lines. This is one of them where I have a 10.5 on Akron. Obviously, it's in no man's land, so it's not like we move through a key number, but still, extra points and kickers are bad in college. 1 point is impactful. In this contest, Miami, Ohio, so far with their resume, played some tough teams. They lost to Wisconsin, Rutgers, and UNLV, with UNLV being the only close one. They actually probably should have won. They had a 54% post-game win expectancy. Since then, they beat up on Lindenwood and Northern Illinois, who started a backup quarterback. That was closer than it should have been for having a backup quarterback on the Northern Illinois side. Miami, Ohio only took the yards per play advantage 4.8 to 4.3. Meanwhile, Akron's played a kind of difficult schedule. They lose to Wyoming and Nebraska, shutout in both. Lose to UAB in a shootout where they had a 41% post-game win expectancy. Then they beat Duquesne and Central Michigan, losing to Toledo in between. The Central Michigan win is probably their best. It is their best. 94% post-game win expectancy, despite having the only turnover. Both these teams have honestly shown me a little more than I thought they would coming into the year. With Miami, Ohio, first of all, injuries. Kenny Tracy at running back, Austin Uke on the offensive line, Josh Lacusa on the edge, Luke Evans at corner, Tony Coleman at defensive back. Some of those may be benchings, but it looks like a lot of them are injuries. For Akron, their running back, Sean Patrick, Alex Adams at receiver, and Justin Anderson at defensive back are the key injuries to note. But Miami, Ohio turned to DeQuan Finn, formerly of Toledo, tries his hand at Baylor, fails, but he's back. We know he can run. He's up to 5.6 yards per carry. But honestly, the passing has surprised me a little bit too. He's at 57% completion, 8.1 yards per attempt, 4 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays. And his receivers have dropped 10% of his passes. That's actually been a problem for both teams. But DeQuan Finn doing exactly what we kind of expected. The receiving game is 91st in efficiency. The rushing is 107th. We're not expecting Tracy to play in this game. So really, if they're going to see increased efficiency at the running back position, it probably comes from Akron being bad on defense, not from them being more talented at running back. Receiver, I think they're dealing with some injuries. They add transfers like Cordell Russell to begin the year. I thought this was going to be pure Power 4 transfers. And they've used Keith Reynolds and Deion Colsey, but it's not the optimal group, which just makes me question. They're probably dealing with something. Cam Perry actually leads the team in receiving at 428 yards. It's a good group for the MAC. It'll be among the top there, but it's still not a fantastic unit. And the offensive line is really the concern. They haven't faced a ton of good defensive lines. You know, they play their P4 teams, but outside of that, not too much. This unit was expected to be about average, and they're 103rd in pass blocking, 45th in run blocking. Only Drew Terrell and Austin Uke have been above average, and now Uke is dealing with an injury. He's someone we need to monitor heading into this game. But does it matter? The answer is probably not. Akron's 91st in total defense. While that's a little better than you would expect, part of it is facing inept offenses like Wyoming, an FCS team. Even Central Michigan is a very limited team, as is UAB, just in opposite directions. UAB can't really run the ball, and Central Michigan can't really throw. So it's kind of a weird situation for this team efficiency-wise. I think they might be worse than what we've seen. They allowed Tucker Gleason 12.2 yards per attempt. They allowed 6.0 yards per carry or more to Nebraska, Toledo, and Central Michigan. I don't know. Their four best players, they're kind of all over the board. Malcolm DeWald at corner, Shaman Cooper at linebacker, Bruno Dahl on the edge, and Elijah Reed. But there's just so many holes in between where Miami, Ohio probably moves the ball. But the real reason I'm on Akron, as a home dog, getting 11.5 points here, they have so much room to improve. There's so many self-inflicted problems with this team. Ben Finley's stats are bad. 50% completion percentage, 6.4 yards per attempt, 3 interceptions. But why are they bad? Well, you look at this infrastructure around him. He's actually been on target a lot more often than this completion percentage indicates. His wide receivers have a 17% drop rate on catchable targets. This is inexcusable. I think it is the highest in the country. If not, this is bottom 5 ranking for Akron's receiving room. They just need to hold on to the ball. And then the offensive line, it's not great. They're allowing a 33% pressure rate. It's actually been a little better than expected. Clearly, they didn't do a lot, and this team has sanctions, so they can't practice as much as other teams, but they're rotating 9 offensive linemen. They've played 9 guys over 100 snaps on the offensive line. Somehow, they're still 79th in pass blocking, 23rd in run blocking, and this unit was supposed to suck. So this is somehow a pretty decent unit overall. Basically, if you can clean up the drops, I think this offense can move the ball enough. Miami, Ohio's defense is okay. They're really bad against the run, 130th there. Fortunately for them, Akron wants to try to throw, but I think they can probably have success there as well. Ultimately, this comes down to being too many points in a game where you have 2 teams that have played kind of similar competition, probably a little better towards Miami, Ohio. But I don't think pacing is really going to be in your favor. Akron's around average. Miami, Ohio is slow. So the value of the point makes sense. But you're taking a team that basically needs to win by 2 scores at this point in Miami, Ohio. So we'll take the points here. It's a greasy game through and through, but that is where we show value. Have these teams power rated closer than the spread indicates. Purdue, Minnesota. 7.5 point spread in favor of Minnesota, a 51 total. We took an over here. Pace is wildly different for both teams. Minnesota is 125th. Purdue is 10th. So when you have these 2 convergent pacings, it's very easy to just, all right, who is going to, let's average them. That's a reasonable way to do it, but generally the team that's favored has an easier time dictating pace. That comes because you're favored, more drives, easier to sustain drives, more plays, which means you play more plays at your pace. But anyway, in this contest, Purdue has been a sieve on defense and a willing participant in shootouts on offense. They scored 31 points against Ball State and Southern Illinois. They scored 34. Then they lose to USC 33-17. They had just fine in that game. They threw 2 interceptions in USC territory that honestly prevented them from scoring more. They lose to Notre Dame, but they put up 30 points, allow 56 themselves, and last week played a shootout against Illinois 43-27. Minnesota has varied their pace and their pass rate a lot in games. So this could be, if they score first, they probably play slower. If Purdue scores first, maybe they're coaxed into an up-tempo game. So far for them, they beat Buffalo. That was a gross game. Beat an FCS team. Lose to Cal 14-27. Play a semi-shootout against Rutgers. So we have seen this done before. It was 31-28. And then they just got blown out by Ohio State 42-3. Injury-wise, it's basically just Aiden Gooseby, defensive back for Minnesota. I'm not sure Kerry Brown and the other ones are 100% healthy, but they're playing. For Purdue, it's E.J. Horton, George Burren, T.J. Lindsey, and Tony Grimes. That's 2 offensive players. Horton's a receiver, Burren at tight end. Then Lindsey, defensive tackle, Grimes at corner. So for Purdue, Ryan Brown's been okay. He has a 61.5% completion percentage, 7.7 yards per attempt, 6 big-time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays, but he runs a little bit. 155 yards on the ground, has taken 13 sacks. That pressure to sack ratio is a little bit high at 21.3%, but he's another guy that's had the problem with drops. 11.7% drop rate for these receivers. They just need to help him out more. And they're not very good. You have the Georgia castoffs like Nitro Tuggle, Michael Jackson. We talked about E.J. Horton. He's banged up, so it kind of just is what it is. They have explosive playmakers, 4 stars from previous Big Ten and SEC teams, but they've yet to put it together. The run game is never going to be elite. Maccabee is just the definition of a replacement level guy. So coming in 75th is kind of expected. The O-line is putrid. So they need to be able to stand up here. Fortunately, Minnesota does not have a good pass rush, but this team has not really faced a pass rush ranked lower than USC. So, I mean, it has been tough. Even Buffalo is a good pass rush for a G5 team. But you have a couple guys that have just been disasters in Coley and St. John. It's a complete mess. Minnesota's defense is built through their coverage unit. They do have one good defensive lineman, Anthony Smith. But overall, this is a linebacker room with Baranowski and Williams that are solid. Your corner, Nestor, Coy Parrish, Kerry Brown, defensive backs. That's how you win with this team so far. And they've been banged up. So it's not super surprising to see them allow 12.2 yards per attempt to Sayin, 7.3 to Kaliak Manis. They have done a decent job on the run as far as box scores go, but efficiency-wise, they still come in 110. All this to say, it's not a stalwart Minnesota defense so far. You can score on this team, which I think Purdue can do. Meanwhile, Minnesota should score on Purdue's defense. They rank 128th. They're dead last in the Big Ten, even compared to UCLA. And this team is outside the top 110 in run defense, pass rush, and coverage. They have played 3 elite offenses, but they've gotten absolutely demolished by Jaden Maeva, CJ Carr, and Luke Altmaier. The front looks a little better, but this was projected to be the second worst Big Ten defense in the preseason. So we've kind of gotten what we've expected from this unit. Now, can Minnesota move the ball? Drake Lindsey's been kind of impressive. He's limited. He doesn't run at all, but his efficiency numbers through the air are actually pretty good. You just wish they had a few better receivers. I'm not like the biggest Javon Tracy guy, but somehow they're still 26th in receiving efficiency. And they're 25th in rushing. Getting back Darius Taylor should help this team too. He didn't play a ton against Ohio State. It sort of makes sense. They tried to give it a go. It didn't matter. It wasn't enough. Once they got pounded in the game, take your guy out, rest him for another day. So I'm not 100% sure he's out of the woods, but just something to watch. Overall, if Purdue can hang and sustain drives, pace in this game is going to be good. I don't trust either defense, and I think the offenses have the advantage. We took an over 51, and you can still find that number readily available. Toledo Bowling Green, another MAC game. Toledo is a 11.5 point favorite. The total in the game is 48. We bet an under 49.5 very early in the week. Slow tempo across the board. Toledo, not Tulane. Toledo is 87th. Bowling Green is 114th. So immediately pacing does not work towards an over. It works towards an under. And I think both teams are fine enough on defense for this to come in. Toledo especially has a great defense. So injury-wise, Toledo's not really dealing with any. Bowling Green's Andrew Kifoyle on the offensive line and Dorian Pringle at linebacker are the big injuries. Toledo so far had a good game against Kentucky where they lose. They blow out Western Kentucky and Morgan State before losing a 1-point game to Western Michigan where they had a 26% post-game win expectancy. But man, that was an ugly game across the board. 3 turnovers for Western Michigan, 2 for Toledo. And then last week, we already mentioned it, their last game especially, they beat Akron 45-3. For Bowling Green, beat Lafayette, lose to Cincinnati, beat Liberty, lose to Louisville, lose to Ohio. It's basically the expected outcome for every single one of those games. And now both teams are off a bye. So Tucker Gleason, 63% completion percentage, 7.8 yards per attempt, 5 big-time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays. That's the big problem with his game. But this team has very good skill position players. Junior Vander Ross, a receiver. They bring in Rudolph this offseason from Northern Illinois. They also have a powerful running back in Chip Tranum. He's a stud at this level of competition, 6.3 yards per attempt. And facing Bowling Green's defense, I'm not sure he's going to meet a lot of resistance. This defense is 119th, 109th against the run, and 108th in coverage. It's sort of a pick your avenue of success. They've gotten beat multiple times by quarterbacks, multiple times by opposing running games. So basically, you're just hoping pace limits this Toledo offense, which I think it can. The other thing that might hurt them a little bit is their offensive line. The best part of Bowling Green's defense is that pass rush, 77, so it's not fantastic. But Toledo is 120th in pass blocking, 59th in run blocking. If you force them into pass blocking sets, maybe Bowling Green can beat them. Not 100% sure there. On the other side, Drew Pine has been the signal caller for Bowling Green. He's at 63% completion, 2 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays, and 5 interceptions, so he's certainly run bad there. But pressure to sack ratio is 23%. That's too high. The pressure rate at 29.8%, nearly 30% is too high. This offensive line is also not very good. 98th in pass blocking, 68th in run blocking. When you look back to preseason rankings, like neither of them were expected to be good, so it's kind of what we thought. The receiving game flat out needs to be better. Their lead receiver has 168 yards, RJ Garcia. He's a Kansas State transfer. Like, there's just no reason they should be this bad. They also can't really run the ball. So all that suits an under. And Toledo's defense is 11th. 14th in run defense, 36th in pass rush, 21st in coverage. They've not faced an offense ranked higher than 51. That was Western Kentucky. But every single passer they faced has been at or below 7 yards per attempt. Kentucky was the only team that rushed for more than 2.4 yards per carry. This is a good defense in the MAC, and that was expected up front. So basically, you have Toledo probably stifling Bowling Green. Can the opposite be true with Bowling Green stopping Toledo a little bit? At 49, the answer is yes. We still show some value at the current number of 48. So that is where we will side in under in Toledo Bowling Green. Louisiana, James Madison, 18-point spread, 45.5 total. This is a greasy game through and through. Louisiana lost their quarterback very early in the season, Walker Howard. They've been splitting quarterbacks since then, but it looks like Lunch Winfield is going to be the starter. His real name's not Lunch. His name is Dwayne, I believe, Dwayne Winfield, but he goes by Lunch. So anyway, he's the quarterback. But they've also been without Shelton Sampson at receiver and George Jackson on the offensive line. James Madison's just been without George Pettaway at running back. So Louisiana plays Rice, lose in a very competitive game. Then they beat McNeese State, but now we lose Walker Howard. So then they get crushed by Missouri. They lose to Eastern Michigan. They had a 19% post-game win expectancy. Beat Marshall barely with a 32% post-game win expectancy. Eastern Michigan and Marshall are very close to being the worst, if not the worst teams in their conference. So this has been a brutal road for Louisiana. They have not looked good, and they have not figured out quarterback. Meanwhile, James Madison's also been limited, but more so just quite haven't lived up to expectations for the team projected to win the Sun Belt. But they beat Weber State. They lose to Louisville, 14-point deficit there. Very close game. They had some chances. They crushed Liberty, but Liberty's quarterback got hurt at halftime. Right before halftime, I should say. They beat Georgia Southern 35-10 and Georgia State last week 14-7, which was probably their most concerning problem, at least among the data points we have. There were just a lot of long drives in that game. James Madison had a turnover run down at the Georgia State 15 and another one inside the Georgia 30. That was kind of, they got a drive inside the Georgia 30, then it was kind of ruined by penalties. So they probably should have won by more. But as far as players in this game, Lunch Winfield, I mean, whether it's him or Daniel Beal, both of their completion percentage are below 50%. You can say it looks like Winfield is more mobile than Beal. So last time they split time in their game, but Winfield's been on the injury report with a foot problem. So who knows how this quarterback room shakes out. What you can say is it's horrible. The team is also dead last in receiving efficiency. That should come as no surprise. They're winning games. Well, they're not winning games. When they win games, as infrequently as that is, it comes through the run game. Zylan Perry's at 7 yards per carry, and they're actually a decent offensive line. They're good at run blocking, at least. They're 48th there. And we kind of thought this would be a good unit. Jax Harrington's a veteran. Bryant Williams is solid too, but Cooper Fordham is a weak link at center, so it's far from a perfect unit. But now they're going to be facing a pretty tough defense for James Madison. This is probably the strength of their team. Basically, you're top 25 in every unit except coverage, where you're 33rd. The best passer has been J.C. French. That was 6.9 yards per attempt. The best rushers have been Louisville and Liberty, both at 3.8 yards per carry. This is stifling defense. And then on the other side, Alonzo Barnett and company have not lived up to expectation. He's currently at a 59% completion, 5.8 yards per attempt, 4 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays. They haven't really done a good job on the offensive line, though. They are 84th in pass blocking, 11th in run blocking. So when they're in pure pass sets, it's been easy for them, opposing teams, that is, to generate pressure. 2 things there. First of all, they're not in those sets that often. This is a run-first team, so they're good in run blocking. And then second, like Louisiana as an opponent, they're 117th in total defense, 124 against the run, and 91st in pass rush. They've only played one good offense, but they got annihilated in that game. And they've gotten beat on the ground by weaker teams like Eastern Michigan and Marshall, which does not bode well against James Madison's power rushing attack. And even without Petway, Wayne Knight's at 7 yards per carry, Jordan Fuller's at 6.4 as a change of pace. We laid it with James Madison at 17.5. It hasn't really moved substantially, so this is another one we'll play. The motivation is scary. Like when James Madison is up 17, hypothetically, how much are they pushing on the gas against Louisiana? That's a question for sure, but we show enough value to play this. Troy, Texas State. This is another one. I just acted too soon. I have a 10.5. This is the worst line I've taken all year. So obviously, mathematically, we show value on Texas State. I didn't really back out of this, so I'm just going to eat this bad line. And I can understand why Troy's taking money. Basically, it's a Texas Tech problem. When you look at Texas Tech, they beat Eastern Michigan 52-27. Okay, you allowed 27 points to a horrific Eastern Michigan team. They barely beat UTSA, and they should have lost. They had a 45% post-game win expectancy, and UTSA has not looked good through most of the season. It was also a weird game, too. UTSA had a punt block for a safety in that contest. It is what it is. They lose to Arizona State. This is one of the better games they've played. It was only 34-15, but still, they couldn't really move the ball. Then they played Nichols, and last week they lose to Arkansas State by 1 point, 31-30, with a 57% post-game win expectancy. Really, it came down to Texas State missing a turnover on downs at the Arkansas State 16, allowing them back in the game. But overall, Troy has a lot of injuries. Goose Crowder at quarterback, so they've had to turn to Tucker Kilcrease, Mojo Dortch at receiver, and Garner Langlow on the offensive line. For Texas State, Jaden Rios and Will Mitchell as defensive backs. But I'm not really sure I buy Troy's offense still. They have a 49% completion percentage behind Tucker Kilcrease, 5.6 yards per attempt, 5 Big Ten throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays. He does run a little bit, 2.9 yards per carry, but his 22.5% pressure to sack ratio is a little high. I don't know. The receiving game has also been a disappointment, which is weird. They're 113th in receiving efficiency, and this group should flat out be better. Rara Thomas is a Georgia transfer. Mojo Dortch, he's a former 4-star. When he's healthy, he's been banged up. He's played at a number of P4 schools. They have a decent run game in Tay Meadows, 5.5 yards per carry. Overall, the skill players are below average, but there's room for growth. I'm just not sure we've seen it. They've been very disappointing for no real reason. The offensive line is pretty good, and they face some tougher defensive lines. They were expected to be a decent to above average offensive line too, so this is a good showing. Only Paul Bowling has been below average. Matt Henry has been a real difference maker at guard. He's a good player. Texas State's defense, 89th overall, 104th in run defense, 91st in coverage. The only good unit they have is that pass rusher that ranks 26th. And they've not faced an offense ranked higher than 97. It was UTSA. They allowed 7.1 yards per attempt to Jalen Raynor. They've gotten beat on the ground multiple times. 7.2 yards per carry to UTSA. 4.3, which might not sound like a lot, but it was Eastern Michigan. 4.4 to Arkansas State. It's a pretty shaky defense. So I don't know. It's a little push and pull here. I don't buy Troy's offense with a backup quarterback. I don't really buy Texas State's defense. Brad Jackson is the QB for Texas State. 67% completion percentage, 8.4 yards per attempt, 6 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays, and he is mobile, 4.9 yards per carry. Taking 7 sacks, his pressure to sack ratio of 22.6% is a little high. But across the board, the skill players are better for this team. Bo Sparks is up to 428 yards. Chris Dawn's all right. Lincoln Pear is at 5.7 yards per attempt, and they have a lot of good change of pace backs. Burrell, Jenkins, Burgess. It's a good run game, and they rank 28th. The offensive line has been fantastic. You can say they have not played any good defensive lines outside of Arizona State, but this was projected to be a good offensive line in the Sun Belt. They're currently top 10 in pass blocking and run blocking. Troy is by far the best G5 unit they've faced to date as far as opposing defensive lines, but they're still 102nd in pass rush. This is not a unit that is a difference-making unit so far. They're 115th in total defense. And they've played some good G5 offenses in addition to Clemson. Like Memphis and Buffalo were good, but they've gotten battered across the board. I think this game could get a little out of hand if Texas State is able to just exploit this Troy defense like they think they can, which is how I ended up playing such a bad line. We mathematically showed value on it and still do. So I'm just going to have to live with this. Can't buy out for a fraction of what I put in. If we lose, we lose. Stanford, SMU. Stanford coming out of the bye. Apparently, they're closer to finding a coach. Who cares? They did get some money, though. Big donation for them. So maybe they can get some players. SMU recently beat Syracuse. Prior to that, they lost to TCU 35-24 in a gross game, 27% post-game win expectancy. Lost to Baylor as well with a 51% post-game win expectancy. So a step back has occurred for SMU. We'll talk about that. Stanford lost to Hawaii, BYU, Virginia. And meanwhile, they beat Boston College by 10 points and San Jose State by 1. So it's looked a little better for this team. They're still a mess. Those teams are bad, and they probably beat themselves more than Stanford winning. We lay the points with SMU. They're also the healthier team. Stanford's been down a lot of guys. On the offensive line, Simeon Pale, Zyron Brown, Nick Fadig have all been out at various points. On defense, Wilfredo Abar, Jordan Washington at defensive back, and Mitch Liegber at defensive back. Who knows who plays out of that group? For SMU, it's basically just Lamadrick Spencer. And Bengal Branson's played better, but he is still not very good. The turnover-worthy plays are at 10. He's taken 13 sacks on a 33% pressure rate. His pressure-to-sack ratio is high, and that brings your completion percentage all the way down to 59.5%. Meanwhile, Kevin Jennings has his own problems. He has the exact same amount of turnover-worthy plays, 10, but double the interceptions, 6. You expect these to be converted about 50% of the time. So Jennings has run poor. Gull Branson's run hot. As far as the efficiency, Jennings is still at 71.5% completion percentage for 8.7 yards per attempt. He can run. He just hasn't. We saw him do it last year. He's taken too many sacks this year. He's not been willing as a runner. It's a really weird situation. And then his receivers have had problems dropping passes 8%. But you hope maybe at some point, like getting back Romello Brinson, Jordan Hudson, and Jalen Cooper all together should help. RJ Maryland's begun to play a little bit better as like a receiving tight end. So I think this unit is without a doubt better than Stanford's, who is completely inept. Like they've got Sam Roush, and then you're kind of looking at a running back by committee. It's definitely worse than what SMU has. An offensive line, it's without a doubt in favor of SMU. Stanford is 115th in pass blocking, 73rd in run blocking. Meanwhile, SMU is 2nd in run blocking, 39th in run blocking. They keep playing Savion Byrd, which is really weird. I don't know why they keep doing this. He's their weakest link by far, but they could have even room to grow. The real hole you can poke is they have not faced a pass rush ranked higher than 101, and that's Syracuse. But at the same time, Stanford hasn't played a lot of good pass rushes either. And then you look at defenses like we don't really expect Syracuse to rush the passer, Stanford to rush the passer anyway. They're 91st in pass rush. SMU is 73rd, but SMU is a lot better everywhere else. They're 24th in total defense. Stanford is 132nd. And they've gotten crushed by everyone. Walker Eget was at 8.2 yards per attempt. Meanwhile, SMU probably has room to grow. Their two best players were expected to be Nokobia and Moses at safety. Neither of them have been very good. It's actually been the corners like Deuce Harmon that have been better. And up front, they've been pretty good on the defensive line. They've also faced some pretty good QBs like Josh Hoover, Sawyer Robertson. That's tough. The best QBs faced for Stanford are like Walker Eget and Chandler Morris. So definitely a step there. We played SMU minus 17.5. 18.5 is in no man's land, but we make this above 20. So think it is playable. Another motivation game, but it is what it is. There are going to be a lot of these through this week, even though it's so strong up top. TCU, Kansas State. So got some injury news. Again, you need to be paying attention, especially on Wednesday when stuff comes out. We're not going to see Dylan Edwards. He's out again. Multiple offensive linemen have been out for a long time for this team. And Jaron Bradley returned in their last game, but only played 2 snaps. That was questionable. TCU lost their right tackle, Ryan Hughes, for the year. And Ansel Dean Mbu at defensive tackle missed their last game too. So it's kind of a weird body of work for both teams. Both teams have good players injured. TCU's played the weaker schedule. They beat North Carolina, Abilene Christian. SMU's a good win, a rightful win too. They lose to Arizona State, blowing a 17-point lead, and then they beat an inept Colorado team last week. Meanwhile, Kansas State played on week 0. We know what happened there. They lose to Iowa State despite a 79% post-game win expectancy. Lose to Army in week 2 despite a 70% post-game win expectancy. Then they lose to Arizona before beating UCF and then losing to Baylor last week by 1 point, but the rightful loser, 24% post-game win expectancy. It's been a mess for this team. So Starting with TCU, Josh Hoover, the real problem is turnover-worthy plays. He has 11 big-time throws, 10 turnover-worthy plays. He's not very mobile, so he's taken 10 sacks. That's a 23% pressure-to-sack ratio. They haven't allowed a lot of pressure. He just has not handled it well. So that's the only problem with Hoover. He's a gunslinger that just needs to take care of the ball a little better via interceptions and sacks. His skill players, not as good as last year, but still pretty good. We saw McAllister return from injury in their last game. Dwyer's fine. Kavorian Barnes also came back, which should boost them up a little higher than 78th in rushing. And the offensive line has actually played well. My biggest concern now is you have questions at both tackle positions. Ryan Hughes goes down, so Quinn Harris comes in. He was horrible. And then Ben Taylor Whitfield's already not a guy that's super reliable. He's been better this year, but he's still been beaten. We've seen that happen. So can Kansas State take advantage of that? Probably not. This team is 123rd in pass rush, 64th in coverage, 79th in run defense. They've done a decent job, but their opponents have been middling. It's a lot of Big 12 teams. Sawyer Robertson got them for 8.8 yards per attempt, but both UCF and Arizona were over 5 yards per carry against this team. So I don't really buy this Kansas State defense. Meanwhile, can Avery Johnson move the ball? I truly don't know. He's had a game similar to Josh Hoover so far with 10 big-time throws and 13 turnover-worthy plays. He does run more, but his completion percentage is lower. His wide receivers are way worse. His pressure-to-sack ratio is a little better. 11.4 drop rate is inexcusable for these receivers. It's Jace Brown and it's nothing else. And even he missed a game, most of the game. Jaron Bradley's not back. The tight ends haven't lived up to expectation. And now you're 127th in rushing. Joe Jackson and these backups have been atrocious behind Dylan Edwards. You have no run game. Your offensive line has played kind of well despite the injuries. They did only allow a couple pressures to UCF. They played well in that game, who is the best pass rush they faced, arguably 41st overall. So it's kind of been solid. It's just like your running backs are so poor. Avery Johnson's not taking care of the ball. How does this go well? TCU's defense, sort of imbalanced. They don't have a pass rush. They're 119th, but pretty good everywhere else. They are good at defending the run, 16th there, and 54th in coverage. Somehow they allowed 9.5 yards per pass attempt to Abilene Christian, but they've been pretty good in every other game. So I don't know what to make of that. TCU's the better team in this spot. We show some value on -2 and some value on the under, but I think the real question is TCU, I mean, they have the edge at almost every position. Can their pass protection with a new tackle keep Josh Hoover upright? If they can, should be able to limit the turnover-worthy plays for him and win this game. So that's where we lean, have not played anything yet. BYU, Arizona. BYU is a 2-point favorite on the road. The total is 48 points here. BYU has played nobody yet. Their best wins are against Colorado and West Virginia, and they had a 30% post-game win expectancy against Colorado. Meanwhile, it hasn't been that much better for Arizona, but they've at least played Kansas State. They won. Lost to Iowa State, got crushed, and then last week they played Oklahoma State and crushed them. So both teams, very weak competition, slightly better for Arizona. Injuries. BYU, Sion Moa at running back, JoJo Phillips at receiver, Anisi Purcell at defensive line, Jack Kelly at linebacker, and Tommy Process at defensive back. For Arizona, Kean Burnett's going to redshirt and Trey Smith on the edges out. So I don't know. We haven't really seen Bear Bachmeier play a good team yet. He has a 69% completion percentage, 9.1 yards per attempt, 3 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays. He does run. So, I mean, I'm still TBD on him. The positive signs are there. I just need to see it against a better team. And Arizona is a better team. They're not elite, but they are better. The receivers have been pretty decent for this team with Chase Roberts and Kingston. Obviously, LJ Martin's a good running back. And the offensive line has been good too. But for some reason, they're still rotating both guards. I know Waylon Luwapaho was injured to begin the year, but he's good. He needs to start now. They basically just need to bench Safar Siak, or however you say his name, the FCS transfer that's been playing for them. Arizona's defense is 11th. They've been pretty good so far this year. They have gotten beat a couple times. The best offense they faced was Iowa State, and in that game, they did allow 13.1 yards per attempt to Rocco Becht, but nobody else has been above 4.7 yards per attempt, and no running game has bested 4.4 yards per carry, and that was Kansas State. Genesis Smith and Dalton Johnson have been awesome. So this is probably the toughest sledding that we will see for BYU, at least to date, as far as their matchup against this Arizona defense. Meanwhile, Noah Fafita has been pretty good. We've seen him use his legs more often, which is weird. He's cleaned up the turnover-worthy plays. He only has 3 of them. All of them have been converted to interceptions, so run extremely bad there. 8.1 yards per attempt, 11 big-time throws. I don't recognize this Noah Fafita. This is shades of 2023 with Cowing and Ted McMillan, not just Ted McMillan last year. Wide receivers have an 8% drop rate too, so considering how good he's looked, it could be better. And I don't know the wide receivers, if they're going to remain in this timeshare they've been using so far. It's not the best group. The run game did get back Reese Cano, so now you have Mahdi, Reese Cano, and Craig. That's a pretty good unit overall. BYU's defense is 35th. I'm just not really sure I buy it. They have not faced an offense ranked higher than 83. That was East Carolina. They did allow 7.4 yards per attempt, which is right on average to Caden Salter, and 7.5 yards per attempt to Khalil Wilkins, the third stringer for West Virginia. I don't know, man. I don't know if Arizona has success. I just have questions. Ultimately, it's not enough points for me to take an Arizona side, but that's where we lean. I'm just not buying this BYU team. Now, I haven't really bought them much this year. I don't think I have a winning record betting them, but we'll see where it goes. Tough game. Navy takes on Temple. This was a highly requested game. Props to you guys. I love the grease, and apparently so do you. So Navy in this spot is undefeated. They beat VMI, UAB, Tulsa, Rice, and Air Force. The latter 2 games being the only ones within single digits. Rice 21-13, Air Force 34-31, with a 38% post-game win expectancy. Navy fumbled near their own red zone. Air Force should have scored. Air Force missed a field goal. So that's the difference in the game right there. For Temple, new coaching staff, Casey Keeler, absolute stud he is, comes over from Sam Houston. They beat UMass. They beat Howard. They lose the impossible games to Oklahoma and Georgia Tech. Actually looked pretty good in the Georgia Tech game before beating UTSA last weekend with a 48% post-game win expectancy. UTSA did the dumb stuff in the game. They had a turnover at their own 40 and an interception going into score at the Temple 15. That resulted in 7 points for Temple. They won by 6, so that is what it is. For Navy, a lot of injuries. Grayson Crawford and Torrin Smith on the offensive line. Luke Hutchinson at tight end. Alex Texa only played 7 snaps. He's their fullback. I don't know. Temple's getting healthier. They're getting back both their safeties in this game, Lewis Fry and Javier Morton, but Caden Suprenant. I'm sorry. I always get that name wrong. He's a linebacker. He's been out for a couple games now. He's got a really tough last name that for some reason puts me in a pretzel. If you know how to say it, please let me know. For Navy, they have a quarterback that can pass, man. I don't know. This might be the best quarterback I've seen at Navy in some time. And they've had a couple good ones, like Malcolm Perry, but Blake Horvath, man. 72% completion percentage, 13.1 yards per attempt. I know Navy's offense is, at least the passing game, is predicated on taking guys by surprise. You still got to throw it to the people. I mean, Blake Horvath is impressive. And Navy somehow is second in receiving efficiency, fourth in receiving efficiency. Or second in receiving, fourth in rushing. That's with players like Eli Heidenreich. Of course, the quarterback's going to be involved in the run game. The skill position players at Navy, yes, it's a triple option, but it's better, at least it functions better when you have good players, and they have the perfect blend right now. The offensive line is also okay, 25th in pass blocking, 83rd in run blocking. They're starting to take on water via injuries, so I have questions there, but overall, it's a good unit. Temple's defense is 62nd, and they're much better in coverage. So 97th run defense on paper, that's a good matchup for Navy. Excuse me. Now, Casey Keeler's no dummy to playing the option. He's faced it before. And he did a good press conference this week where they've put in some stuff to potentially stop this. Just him as a coach, I have faith in his ability to scheme for something like this because he's been, throughout his career, Casey Keeler has been working with less and taking it and turning it into more. So I tentatively think they'll be able to at least situationally stop this defense, but at some point, Navy will have some success. Their personnel is just too good. On the Temple side, Evan Simon's been a good game manager. There's not really much to say about him. 59% completion, 7 yards per attempt, 3 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play, 137 rushing yards, that's 3.3 yards per carry. Everything's below average, not drastically. And the 1 turnover-worthy play, when you have a below-average quarterback, as long as you're not committing turnovers, you can live with this. You can sustain drives. You can get in scoring position, chip away what you can. Take field goals if you need to. The one turnover-worthy play is what makes this work. And the receivers aren't great. They're 79th in efficiency. The rushing attack is 82nd. The backfield, as far as offensive line, has been pretty good. They're 53rd in pass blocking, 41st in run blocking. And Navy's defense has given up production. This team is 62nd in total defense. They're actually tied spot on with Temple, which doesn't happen a lot. 57th in run defense, but 115th in coverage. You can throw the ball over the top of Navy's defense. We saw Air Force do it last week, which is shocking in and of itself. We show value on Temple plus the 9. I'm probably going to play this. I think there's a chance Navy takes some money, so we are going to wait and see where this goes. But that's the last one we want to talk about in depth, so I am going to pivot. There were a couple other requests, just don't have time for the full breakdown. Again, I'll try to figure this out. As we get more weekday games, it's just so hard to be able to actually go through all of the Grease games. So I want to hit the weekday games for everyone as well. So maybe we'll do a Saturday live stream. But I know there were a couple other requests. So, like, for example, Tennessee and Arkansas, that game is a 12.5-point spread. We make it closer to 10, which I don't love considering all the changes with Arkansas. You have a brand new coaching staff, basically. Petrino has taken over for Pittman, but there was a lot of feuding on that staff, not so behind the scenes either. So then Petrino basically cleans house and brings his own guys in. We show a tiny bit of value on the over. That's at 68. That's a little high for us. Iowa takes on Wisconsin. This is a 3-point spread. This is one of those injury situations. We need to know Gronowski and Edwards. I think they're both going to play. If that's the case, we show some value on Iowa. The big key in that game is how does Wisconsin's offensive line do against Iowa's defensive line? The trench battle in this game is key because neither team can really throw the ball. For Iowa, you have the best offensive line in the Big Ten, at least top 3. Maybe Ohio State would have a run at you, or Oregon, maybe Penn State. But this Iowa offensive line is phenomenal. Wisconsin's only asset on defense is their pass rush, and it's a middling unit. Yeah, Reiger and company look great against some weaker teams. I know Reiger beat Sprague from Michigan a couple times last week. But you should be able to win that matchup. And then conversely, you have Iowa's defensive line against, we'll see on Renfro. If he's out, man, they should eat alive this Wisconsin offensive line. We'll see on that. That is a very tough game to parse overall. There were a couple other requests. Clemson, Boston College was one. We make that closer to 13. I'm not going to bet. I think Clemson might actually beat down that Boston College team overall. And looking for other requests here. Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech. We made this one in favor of Virginia Tech. I just can't take something like that. And I think that's it. Pittsburgh, Florida State. We do show a little value on Pittsburgh, but that's also very volatile. It's the second start for a freshman QB. So with a lot of these games that were requested that are close to the spreads we make them, I just can't really get to because of environmental factors. So we'll wait on this. There's definitely going to be more games we play. If you're interested in that, it's available in Discord always. But that'll do it for us. Leave any feedback. It is much appreciated, and I need it as we try to develop the show and make it the best we can. But very much appreciate your time. Thank you for watching, and good luck.